Those inmates would be locked up for 23 hours. They would have an hour out of rec where they would go outside. Even outside, they'd be in a cage. I've had so much shit happen to me on Rikers as an officer from other officers. If I have a blood house and you give me 3 Crips to put in my blood house. Now, first of all, what we do is called pedigree. When you have someone on your gate trying to come into your housing area, I have to come out as an officer and I have to look at you and talk to you and essentially interview you before I let you in my housing area. They willingly said, we're Crips. I said, they can't come in here. This is a blood house. You're asking for a problem.
What are some of the other ways that you've seen officers fuck with inmates?
Countless, not give them any soap, not give them toilet paper. Imagine having to ask for toilet paper. Fuck up their food, commissary, go in there, step on their honey buns and smash the chips. Oh, this is trash now. Lock everybody else out, leave them locked in. Oh, you didn't take a shower? Oh, it's tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. I guess it's even worse because you didn't have any toilet paper, right? No, when you have, like you said, the power over someone, how do you want to misuse it? How far you want to go with it? There's been a couple of times that I've done overtime in what's considered the psych area. And these guys, they don't freaking sleep. The things that they do are beyond your comprehension on why they're doing it. And there's this one guy, he had bugs all over him. They do random searches sometimes. They picked his cell. He has bugs running all over his body. He has bugs in his bin. Or the guy who will stand in front of his cell, sing songs and bang on the cell all night. This is their environment, right? You can't try to stop these people from doing these things these are their coping mechanisms. So now let's just say you're one of these officers who go in and try to stop it. You're fucking with their coping mechanism of someone crazy. You have to go in there and just deal with that environment. As long as nobody's injuring someone or themselves, you've done your job. You're being used for, 16 hours a day, 4 days a week. A lot of times you're missing out on life. That jail becomes essentially your life. I was very unhappy after a while. I got into an altercation with a particular inmate one day. He had threatened, it was a newer blood, and he was a very high ranking gang member, and he got the short end of the stick. And then one day I came home and I had a very particular pair of inmate shoes at my back door. Shoes that only inmates wear on Rikers Island were now at my back door. Leaving shoes at a person's back door that only the inmates wear, to me, is a clear threat that I know where you are or I know where you stay.
So what I want to say is,
No. Let's start with maybe like a little boring stuff. What made you decide to get into this and stuff like that? You were obviously a very cool security guard. I mean, it's always the cool cops and security guards that do the interview. Did you notice that? Like, you're never gonna hear a bad cop do an interview with someone. It's always the good ones. What made you decide to become a prison guard?
Um, it was simply having a family. I had my sons were born in 2005, so I have twin boys. And just the aspirations of and goals of wanting to just be able to take good care of them. It was known to be a stable career, even though it did have its stories about, um, the craziness that it can happen. But it was known to be stable. I actually had a cousin who was um, in Rikers Island years before me who said, yeah, come over, um, you know, um, try this career and start to be on the path of retiring and that type of stuff. So just for career stability, really, in New York.
Yeah, I know Rikers Island is actually a place where, as I understand, most people held are actually legally innocent, so they're awaiting trial and not convicted. And I know that sometimes inmates spend years waiting for trial over minor charges because they couldn't afford bail. Man. But of course, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of people who are not good. Well, a lot of people who are not good. I mean, doesn't take much for any one of us to land in jail or prison, actually. After your experience working with people in there, what do you call a good person? Because what do you think actually separates a good person from a bad person? Is it character or circumstances? Because I think you have a different perspective on that. Like, as I said, any one of us can be there. All it takes is one bad decision when when you flip off or something like that. And then being in there, I think if you talk to the worst of the worst prisoners, okay, let's leave the extremes of pedophilia and stuff aside, but if you talk to the worst one of them, if you really like, dig dig very deep into it, you're gonna see some similarities. You're not gonna give them an excuse for what they did, but there's gonna be a reason. How do you see like the good person versus a bad person, or even is there such a thing? I think that's important for every security guard in jail, and also the police, the cops, to remember that you're really not that different from these people, not as much as you think anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a super great question. Um, so let me start off by saying I think what's missing from working in when you're a correction officer, I think what's different between the good correction officers and the great ones, the good ones still hold on to a bit of humanity. When you said what's a good person, as opposed to what's a bad person, um, the difference really is the bad person no longer tries, right? Because if they're in a bad situation, if they're in a highly stressful situation, if they have things stacked up against them, whatever it may be, bad family, no resources, just situation after situation, and they turn to do some crime, right? Let's say they start to scam or they start to steal or rob or whatever the case may be. Some people actually feel like this is the only thing that I could do to feed myself, or maybe myself and whomever I'm responsible for, and they get caught up. And that crime is terrible. You don't want to excuse the crime. But like you said, the difference between a correction officer and a person, an inmate, is really just decisions that they've made, um, and how they've handled certain adversities. The bad person, some people get into crime and like it. Some people, whether it's exciting for them or whether it gives them a bravado that they searching for. Um, but I've seen certain people in prison, of course, in jail, of course, because Rikers is actually a jail, um, who are just they're maniacs. And even if you do what you were saying, if you dig a little bit and you work with that person and just be mindful of what they talk to you about, over time, you'll have these interactions with these people. They'll slowly but surely trust a little bit more to talk and talk and talk, and you realize that a lot of those people who are considered menaces were the people who were abused, um, who didn't feel safe around like family, or like I know this one guy who from the time he was 3 or 4, his uncle was abusing him, and his moms didn't stop the uncle from abusing him. So he grew up with this hatred for his mom, and coincidentally got older and started doing crimes against women. Now it doesn't make I would hate for any woman to run into that. Um, but I see how certain circumstances can turn you into a monster as well. So it's a very fine line there a lot of times. And some officers care about that fine line. I mean, it's nothing that they could do because they're not psychiatrists, so they can't fix you. But and some people just really just don't care. They don't care. Just go to hell over there, do what I said, or or there's a problem type of thing. So I think that's the difference between good and bad, really, sometimes. There's a different, some shades of gray.
That's a really fair point. It's in the trying, I guess. I just had an interview also with one of the philosophers on this podcast who was very smart, and I asked him a similar question. How do you know you're actually moral if what you see as moral today will not be moral 500 years from now? Just like slavery was deemed as okay before, but today it's not. So how do you actually know you're doing the right thing, right? And he had a very similar answer. What he says, a moral person is someone who just keeps trying. Like throughout the years, you're gonna discover that something's not right, something is wrong, or something is right, or whatever. And the goal is to just keep trying. Is in the path and intent, not the actual situation, right? So I guess what I can get from that, and I agree that a good person is someone who is trying to better themselves because we're all fucked up in some ways. That was the biggest relief ever for me. Anyway, your unit was called One Main, the House of Pain. I mean, how bad was it? Because I know there have been inmates who've been locked in cells for 23 hours a day or something like that.
Yeah, that was called punitive seg. So they would be, those inmates would be locked up for 23 hours. They would have an hour out of rec, and their hour of rec where they would go outside, even outside they'd be in a cage. So I mean, very limited human contact. And that's normally where people ended up who did things in the jail, like cut someone or had some very violent act. Then they would go over there for a certain period of time. The unit that I ended up having as a steady unit was called a House of Pain. Um, it was actually when you go into GMDC, which was the jail, because there are 10 on the island. When you go in and you go through the Sallyport doors, as soon as you hit the hallway and you make a left, mine was the first jail that you would you would encounter when you walk down the hall. Those first floors were normally the places where would have to get respond to the most. So they wanted them accessible if there was an incident and they had to, put on the gear and come in and handle a situation. It got its nickname House of Pain. I don't know who gave it to the unit. That's predated me. One side was a gang called a gang. The Blood Gang was on one side of it because there was two sides to it, and the other side was another Hispanic gang called the Trinitarios. And they weren't really friends of each other, but they didn't mix or intermingle either. Um, so it was just known to be a violent area. It was the 1 main, 5 main, 3 main. Those were just known to be violent areas. And um, when I got there, I'm human, so even when I am nervous about something, or one thing that I'm happy about, it doesn't show on my face. Being nervous or in a situation where I know that I have to be alert and aware does just that for me. It makes me more alert and more aware of my surroundings and what's going on around me. So I did a lot of watching and listening before I initially started to engage with the inmates a lot. Um, but that's where I spent the majority of my time.
That was well. What I'm thinking is, see, you went to the academy. Um, they prepared you to a certain extent. Um, but I'm just thinking academy teaches rules, but jail does not follow rules. So you kind of learn on the job. So you are basically trained for law, but then you are forced to operate in chaos. So you are trained for a rule-based world and then dropped into a relationship-based world, right? So the academy teaches law, but jail runs on power and unwritten rules. So that means officers aren't really failing because they're bad. They're failing because they're forced to, what would you say, translate theory into chaos with no translator. So they're trained for what should happen, and then Rikers forces you to deal with what actually happens. Like yeah, like violent. But actually, you know what? Fuck violent. Mentally health inmates who are unpredictable. How about that? Because I think that predictability is safety. Ask any domestic abuse victim. Violence you can predict and is therefore less dangerous. Uh, Than less dangerous than an unpredictable behavior because you cannot model it. And I take a violent person to guard any day over someone who's unpredictable. Like there's no pattern to respond to. So what I'm asking is, I guess, how did you learn on the job to deal with people who are mentally unhealthy that you were unprepared for? Because I think it's like jumping into cold water, basically.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to I can compare it to going to a foreign country, you know? When you go to a foreign country, you're like, "Okay, what is this? What is this? I read about it, you know? I know if this happens, I'm supposed to write them up for this and that and that and that." But the thing that gets kind of lost is you start to when you go on the island as a new officer, they do pair you with a seasoned officer. So that seasoned officer is showing you the ropes and basically maybe some shortcuts of how to do the job more effectively based on his experience. And then you as the officer, the first thing you're probably thinking, maybe even subconsciously, is if they put me with this guy, you know, or this girl, this young lady, they know what they're doing. So let me model or pattern myself after that officer. Where you kind of uh can fall, I guess, in a little bit of trouble is discerning what you're comfortable doing. You may not be comfortable what you see others do. So you have to kind of really look at it and say, well, I'm not gonna do that because that may get me, or this may do this. So it is definitely its own world, and you have to be mindful and cognizant of, just like you said, theory, and then putting that theory to practice. Because these people have developed relationships. They've worked with this officer just hypothetically 5-10 years. So he runs the shift a certain way. So now you come in there and you're trying to run it by the book with this and this. You have to be aware. And even people who aren't in jail, they they've gotten used to a certain thing, or having access in a certain way, or being able to do a certain thing. And now you're coming in and saying, no, you have to do this. So while all that's going on with you trying to do a good job, the intentions, like we spoke about, are great, right? You're trying to do a good job. You're trying to do it by the book, but you're talking to 30 plus men who are in the same gang, who've been exposed to the same thing before you've gotten there, who all 90% of them are in jail because they can't make bail. They have all these stresses going on, court, this, that, and the third. Their loved ones stop talking to them. They feel abandoned. There's all this other stuff maybe going on. And here you just are. It's kind of like you're just another rung on the ladder. Like, who the hell is this person? So you're immediately, if you're smart, you're gonna know you're gonna run into a head. It's gonna come to a point where there's some sort of situation or altercation that may happen over time because of this stuff, you know? So the first thing, I would say to any officer when you go into an area, is remember you have to earn your respect. So I would tell inmates, listen, even if I had an officer, let's say, I don't know, I'm not gonna call anybody's name that sounds, so I'll just say what I see. White paint. That's what I see. White paint, right? I say, look, Officer White Paint is comfortable doing this. That doesn't work for me. I don't feel like I'm not gonna get in trouble doing this, so I'm not gonna do it. Unfortunately, when they're here, that's on them. But you have to kind of take that tone and stick to what you say when you're in those environments. And that sticking to what you say is paramount. It gains you trust in anything. Um and you just have to continue to work with that. And once they know what your intentions are, hey, these are my intentions. I'm not here to make your day hard, but I need to make sure that I'm doing my job as well. Um so I'm not doing this to be an asshole to you, but I'm doing this because this is what my job requires. I know it's unfortunate. That's just kind of what it is. And normally people will give you a little bit of room in that. And then you have those who are hell no, da da da, and that's when you know you got work to do, and that's where you need to focus on to make sure you don't get into an altercation, or you kind of have to see how that goes, type of situation. But yeah.
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Starting therapy can be hard. The right therapist for you may not be in your area. BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy session as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link helps you support this channel, and it also gives you a 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Again, go to betterhelp.com/Captainese. Clicking that link gives you 10% off your first month of therapy.
Especially because it's not 100% that when this guy gets out, that's the last time you see him. So what is an instant respect killer then? Because I know it gains probably a lot of time to gain respect, but you can lose it pretty easily. What's the easiest way?
Huh. For men, I always felt like Rikers Island was hyper or super masculine. It was like a super masculine environment. So everyone is about their respect. Everyone wants to put their chest out. But the minute they know that you're not going to do what you said you were going to do, you're done, in my opinion. You're done. You cannot go on the island and say me and you are talking, and I'm telling you, hey man, I told you can't steal inmate Johnson's food. If you steal inmate Johnson's food, I'm coming in your cell. I'm gonna get that food. If you run at me, I'm gonna spray you. I'm gonna knock you out. I'm gonna drag you up. Da da da. You cannot do all of that, right? Even though you're not, and by no way means is that what you're supposed to do. But you cannot say you're gonna do all that, and then that guy goes to steal the food, and you sit on the chair and say, "Wait till next time." Your credibility is shot. You're done for. And once you do that, you've put yourself in a bad position. You put yourself in a real bad position, because that's what their whole thing in there is, respect with each other. So that's how they gauge you as well. Oh, Officer V's here. I've had people who we've done cell searches on um entire housing areas, and of course you have on a helmet, you have a baton and a riot gear, and you're standing there, with your arms crossed, and you're just waiting for something to happen if it does happen, so you can respond to it. And I've had inmates walk by me and say, "I see those goddamn tattoos, V. I know that's you." Yo, y'all chill out. Officer Visa here. And right, and when you hear that, you think that I went into Rikers and had 1,200 fights, right? The whole time, a little under 5 years that I spent there before I decided I had to go, I only had 3 altercations. That's it. I was not there to fight or to be if I could talk and de-escalate you, of course I would. Why do I wanna get into this altercation with you? And like you said, I'm gonna see you outside one day.
And this is something I noticed is the higher the stakes, the more polite people get. I think the reason why everyone today is allowed to just say anything, it's because the words don't have consequences anymore. It's funny because it's what you see in boxing or in martial arts in general. The more the person can fight, the more respectable they become. But I think in prison, respect is not it's not necessarily just moral, it's more tactical, because you reduce danger by lowering the emotional temperature of the room. I mean, you use respect as a tool rather than holding it as your actual value a lot of the times. Um, Also, in prison, I think life in general, but uh, don't act tough. I think lockup is one of the places where fake toughness will get exposed, and and I have noticed that the louder and the more macho the guy is, it makes me think of guys like Andrew Tate and similar who position themselves as tough guys even though they've never actually been to war or combat or even seen combat. I'm like, bro, you sell online courses for a living. But outs in the outside world, in the normal peaceful environment, that works, you know. And also after I've seen Tate actually box in the ring, it's like I've seen enough. Hope he makes a lot of money off of these guys. It's one of the environments where if you're not tough, shut the fuck up. Do not act tough because you're gonna get tested. This is not like the outside world. And I also made a correlation. Like all the people that I know that can fight and that are capable of violence and that I would actually call dangerous are people who are actually very polite and very nice. And they only take their sword out when necessary. Talk to me about your entry into the segregation unit, 3 Main.
Um, 3 Main was 3 Main was somewhere that I worked a few times. We had a warden at that time. I honestly forget his name. I think I forget it purposely. But he used to do a lot of different projects and programs and try different things on the island. And like I said, that's a place where 23 and 1 pretty much the lockdown for 23 hours. So they eat in their cells, their meals every day. They shower. The showers have individual it's almost a cell inside the shower. You have to open up this gate, let them in, uncuff them, close the gate, type of thing. And one thing you should be mindful, everything that happens in Rikers happens in regular life, right? The stakes are just higher. The stakes are higher. So if you could get in if you can get in trouble or you could get reprimanded for doing something in a regular job that maybe you didn't really do, it didn't really fall on you, but somehow somebody pinned it on you. That happens in regular jobs, and when that happens in Rikers, um you know, you're dealing with potential charges depending on what it is. So one day in particular, I got asked to work out of my main unit, which was 1 Main, and go over to 3 Main. Um, and this day, I was told they wanted some strong officers over there to help out the situation. So as I said to you earlier, 1 Main, one side of it was all Bloods, and one side of it was the Trinitarios, which is another gang. I went in 3 Main that day, and I mean, from gate when I entered, it was just banging. It was banging on cells. It was yelling, hollering, screaming, talking about food. It was just a lot. Cursing, people just you could just tell there was just this unrest in there. And it was like, what the hell did I just walk into? Like, what did I just walk into? And apparently these officers were getting splashed going up and down a tier. Splash could be a number of things. It could be uh defecation, urine, toilet water. It could be anything that someone wants to put in a tube. Normally it was toothpaste or lotion, and mix it up or leave it for a few days so it all melts together, fuses together. And while you walk by the cell, they'll put it in the crack of the door and normally smash it really hard, and it'll be all over your face and your uniform and stuff like that. It was disgusting. To me, that's the second most disrespectful thing someone can do to you on an island. The first is probably cutting your face, right? So they were getting splashed going up and down the tier. And when I got into the remain and the other officers left after they told me what the information was that they told me, because you're supposed to get debriefed from the officer that had the post prior to you. They left. I went on the tier and I pretty much made an announcement. Listen, I know you guys hadn't eaten breakfast yet. The next meal was there. I can't even remember if it was what the meal was or anything like that, but they had basically a meal was coming during the 3 to 11 tour. They missed breakfast. Breakfast is at 5 a.m. I work 3 to 11. So imagine your breakfast sitting there from 5 a.m., right? Because these guys are scared to go down the tier and feed you because they're having situations as they're going down the tier. So I made this announcement. I told them, I'm going to get your breakfast started. We're going to get that out the way. We're going to do showers. Gave them a rundown of what we're going to do. Because when like I said, I'll admit now, I was scared, myself. But when I'm scared, I don't fold in fear. Like, okay, this is scary. It reminds me, again, to be vigilant of what I'm doing, make sure I'm seeing everything, and we need to get to work. So I go down the tier. I start walking up the tier. All I heard was one of the inmates who used to be in my one main was down with 3 main. I didn't know he was there because when they move you, they just move you. They don't tell you where you're going. And all I hear is, yo, that's Officer V. Yo, that's Officer V. Y'all chill the fuck out. We're about to get stuff started. Get it out. He's watching. So in my heart, I'm like, all right, yeah, let's get this rocking, right? I'm a little more upbeat, right? So I start now to have my officer get the food ready. I go down the tier because now about respect, right? I know they've been splashing officers. Now I gotta establish I'm not scared to go down this tier. So I immediately walk down the tier to do my count. Hey, I'm about to do a count. Everybody take everything off your mirrors. I need to see in your cell. Let me do the count so we can do the feeding. I go down the tier, do my count. Count. Clear the count. Cool. That's the right count. All right. We're gonna start the feeding. I take out the people who, because we have the inmates prepare the trays. Of course, we don't do that. So I had those guys in there while I started doing the showers. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's from a minute ago, but I think it's 3 in the shower. While I'm doing this, a couple of guys are getting put in the day room. But when they're in the day room, they're being they're in the view of the TV, but they're secured to the table. What no one told me, the previous officers who took the post, they didn't tell me that when they attempted to do the feeding, one of the inmates grabbed the officer through the slot and took his handcuff key. So now there's a handcuff key that I'm unaware is circulating on the floor. So we had about 2 or 3 bodies in the day room. I had one guy in the shower. I was transporting another guy to the shower as well because I said it can hold 3. So I'm trying to get stuff moving so we can start the day. And while I'm doing that, while these guys are fixing trays, in a little time pass, and I just hear rumbling, boop, 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 because there's a lot of plastic tables and stuff, so you can't break things with edges and, stab people and whatever, whatever. So everything makes noise. These guys have uncuffed themselves. And now they're in the day room by the TV fighting. Boo, 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 boo. You don't know how serious it's going to be, so you have to hit your personal alarm. So the people start to suit up. They're there in, I don't know, 30 seconds or less, 30, 45 seconds. They're there. We get everything back under control. But what happens essentially was the communication from officer to officer. I guess officer that I relieved didn't want to get in trouble and say, hey, this guy stole my key. You may want to, because in hindsight, what we could have done was we could have had the team respond to that unit from jump, do the searches, find the key, and then everything else would have ran smoothly. But that's not what happened. So, I mean, to put it lightly, I was pissed off when that happened because number one, I have a main unit. I expect to go there and work because I put work in there to get that running a certain way. You put me in the second unit, and then the officers that I relieve leave me holding the bag, so to speak, and vulnerable. And fuck if you don't want to get in trouble, but damn, for your fellow person, say, hey, bro, someone has a key in here. Something. What if that key led to my death or serious injury? It is possible in there. So I was so pissed off at that. And later on, that same officer didn't want to get in trouble. And I've never said this on a podcast, but I'll go ahead and say it. Later on, this officer, I'm not gonna say his name, didn't want to get in trouble. So they wrote it as if that happened on my tour. That day, whenever an incident happens, you have to write a to-from. You have to write a report on what happened. So once I wrote my report, I had it looked over to make sure it was accurate. I made a photocopy of it because I know my photocopies state timestamp that report. Later, when I had to answer for that, someone else wrote a whole different report and turned that shit in. So I would hold that bad. But I have a saying that I love called "Mama didn't raise no fool," right? So when they presented that report, I said, I don't know whose report that is. This is my original report. And I pulled it out of my memo pad and said, here, it's timestamp. This is when I did this report. I don't know who wrote that report. I don't know whose signature that is. But I suggest you guys figure that out. And I left it at that. But you're not going to get me to hold a bag that's not for me. That's just, and it's stuff like that happens. You have to be mindful of. You got to be mindful of. It's CYA. It's cover your ass.
It is life lessons on steroids in prison, I guess you could say. It's like high school with weapons. Same dynamics. Do inmates adjust based on reputation and personality of the officer?
Yeah. A lot of inmates, they'll see your reputation follows you from jail to jail. Oftentimes, those officers are ran so thin. A lot of them are doing back-to-back doubles. And when I was there, you were working 4s and 2s, which means you work for 4 days or off for 2 days. I don't know what they're doing currently. I think it's still the same, but sometimes you work 4 double. So 16 hours, 16 hours, 16 hours, 16 hours. And you're there for, I mean, 22 years. So you've established a long resume of who is this person. They've got to watch you for 20 years. So if they know that you're going to, and a lot of the women, and I understand why they do it, if they're in a super hyper masculine environment, they have to promote strength or something as protection, right? Because you got a bunch of men around you who just work out and try to look for you and look for your weaknesses. They want to tell you how pretty your eyes are today and see how that you respond to that. Or ask you for soap and then you drop it in their hand, but they touch your hand to see how you respond to that. The people been watching you so some women from jump, you say, hey, can I get some soap? What the fuck you want soap for? You ain't had soap yesterday. What? And then you be like, damn. And then the reputation that they establish is don't even talk to her. So a lot of the inmates won't even talk to that lady the entire shift because they know.
They try to compensate for it. But well, also I guess you also it they always say if you're a 2 on the outside as a prison guard and you're a female, you're automatically a 10. So I also assume it attracts a lot of women who don't really get a lot of male attention on the outside. And in there, they not only do they have attention, but they also have a dominance and they have the power, right? Maybe maybe prison guard at Rikers is the best for a female who is a former firefighter lesbians who has a military haircut and drinks beer or something, like, but no. Mm. So that's what I think that's the personality that would work best. But look, I don't know. What are some of the ways that the officers would fuck with inmates that you've seen? Because as an officer, if you really want to, you can do that. I mean, you could really have fun and just put one blood in a Crips unit.
I had a captain do that to me before. I had a blood house, he put 3 Crips in there. I've had so much shit happen to me on Rikers as an officer from other officers. And I'm not gonna say officers, I'll say from higher ups. Because it's really the captains that make certain decisions. If I have a blood house and you give me 3 Crips to put in my blood house. Now, first of all, what we do is called pedigree. When you have someone on your gate trying to come into your housing area, I have to come out as an officer and I have to look at you and talk to you and essentially interview you before I let you in my housing area. Who are you? And they willingly said, we're Crips, we're da 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 da. I said, why the fuck would he, with this particular captain, put you here? I call. I said, they can't come in here. This is a blood house. What? You're asking for a problem. That's the only place that they could go. It's the only space that we have. That I go into now. By this time, thankfully, I had such a rapport with my housing area. I went and spoke to one of the bloods that makes stuff happen in my housing area. If there's stuff that happens, it happened when I was on vacation, not when I was there out of respect. I said, listen, I got 3 Crips that I need to house here temporarily. I'm going to allow them to shower separately from you guys. I'm going to keep them in their cell because I spoke to them. We're going to feed them. But I need them to be okay while they're here. Because this is another thing that I'm feeling like somebody's doing some shit. And shit happens on, like you said, high school. Shit happened because there was a captain who was interested in my partner who was super attractive. And me and her were like sisters and brothers. Like that, I looked at her like a little sister. I never looked at her sexually. I was married anyway, so I was I was cool. But because we were close, on the island, they assume you're fucking, right? So we're close, so we're fucking. And because of that, this one captain he knew I hated overtime. So when he worked, I was getting overtime. If I liked to go home and he knew I liked overtime, he would have sent me home. This is the kind of dumb shit that you sometimes encounter with certain people, right? So yeah, I had 3 Crips in my housing area in a blood unit, and nothing happened to them.
With things like that, when you want something to be communicated, I assume you also follow the gang politics and you always speak to the leader of Bloods, right?
That's how they move. So yeah, I would speak to I would speak to the people who who I know and say, okay, we're gonna turn this shit up today, and it'd be a problem.
What are some of the other ways that you've seen officers fuck with inmates?
Countless, not give them any soap, not give them toilet paper. Um, Imagine having to ask for toilet paper. Hmm. Um, no soap, no toilet paper. Fuck up their food, commissary. Have a whole bin of commissary. Go in there, step on their honey buns and smash the chips. Oh, this is trash now. Throw it away. Leave them locked in their cell. They're not supposed to leave them lock everybody else out. Leave them locked in. So now essentially you're treating them like the 23 and 1. They've locked in all day. Oh, you didn't take a shower? Oh, it's tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. I guess it's even worse because you didn't have any toilet paper, right? No, when you have, like you said, the power over someone, it's how do you want to misuse it? How far you want to go with it?
Yeah. I've heard of officers, but as far as teenagers go, who are also on Rikers Island, obviously you cannot hit a teenager or anything, but they would know that there are fights happening between teenagers, and they wouldn't really do anything about it. But they knew that people are getting beaten up, so they would see a teenager with a black eye, they'd be like, "Oh, you got in a fight, huh? Did you get him?" Well, they wouldn't really do anything about it. Um, I guess that's also one of the reasons for actually pepper spraying officers in the academy, because I know it gives you like an insight into how much power you're actually holding in a way. Pepper spray it. How brutal is it actually? Because I know it is about pain, but it's also about panic control. So the test isn't just physical, it's actually psychological. Like, can you still think while your body is screaming? That's actually training decision making under stress, not just toughness. Is it as brutal as it looks like?
The spray is pretty harsh, and having gotten sprayed multiple times, it's one of those things that when it happens to you, after you're like, I'm never doing that again. And then when you have to do it again, you're like, fuck, I got to go through this because there's nothing to do. People have tried all kind of things. People have tried pouring milk on their face. People have tried because the spray is actually a concentrated pepper. Um, it's concentrated. OC spray is like aura capsin, something like that. It's literally a concentrated pepper. So when they spray it across your face, it looks a little red, and they tell you to blink, and you blink, and once it gets on that mucous membrane in your eyes or whatever the case may be, it's no way to really cure it but to go through it. So you got to be careful. I tell people who get sprayed, before when you go home, wash your face in the sink, because the last thing you want to do is be naked in the shower and having burning sensation going down your entire body. Really, it's not nice. But some people have gotten sprayed so much, it doesn't affect them. Literally, you build a resistance to it. There are some guys that you could spray them on the island, they could still function through it. It's not as bad as it was that first time, that 15th time. It's like, oh, yeah, I've been through this before. But if I go into an environment having been exposed to it now, when I go into the environment, if there's spray present, it's like a tingle that I can feel. It's like, oh, yeah, someone was spraying in here.
What's the craziest shit you've seen?
That's a hard question to ask about Rikers Island. What's the craziest shit you've seen?
There's a variety of things to choose from.
The craziest stuff that I've seen are the people on the island who you could tell the island's not what they need. Working in there's been a couple of times that I've done overtime in what's considered the psych area of where the crazy inmates are. And these guys, they don't freaking sleep. They don't freaking sleep. The things that they do are beyond your comprehension of why they're doing it. And there was this one guy, man, he had bugs all over him. He had bugs all over him. He had a bin. In his bin were a couple of clothes, like long johns. And you could just see these bugs and I'm talking about hundreds, just bugs. He's standing there while we're searching because they do random searches sometimes. They picked his cell. He comes out with his mattress. He has bugs running all over his body. He has bugs in his bin. Man, it just makes your freaking skin crawl. It's like, this guy needs some help. And the captain's like, do you want to go to shower because you have bugs? And he's like, no, he's protecting the bugs. And one of the officers was like, please don't take his bugs. Like, I don't know what that was for him, but I've never seen something like that. It's like a movie. Imagine you standing next to somebody at a bus stop and you just see 1,000 bugs running, 100 bugs running over. You're like, what's going on with you? And then the more you think about it, where are these bugs? Are they all over your body? Like, man, it was just, it's crazy. Or the guy who'll stand in front of his cell and sing songs and bang on the cell all night, but they're crazy. So you like, this is their environment, right? And they tell you, hey, you can't try to stop these people from doing these things these are their coping mechanisms. So now let's just say you're one of these officers who go in and try to stop it. You're fucking with their coping mechanism of someone crazy. So you as the officer, you basically have to just stay in at him to have a smooth as smooth as you can shift. You have to go in there and just deal with that environment. As long as nobody's injuring someone or themselves, you've done your job. Everyone's alive and breathing. You kept them in custody. You've done your job. But you're doing your job while this crazy dude is over here singing John Wayne at 3:30 in the morning, banging on his cell while the bug guy is sitting over here. He doesn't sleep. Wow, it's like, what is this environment that I'm in? I used to hate overtime in there. Put me anywhere else. But my mind couldn't handle that area that well.
You guys in the US have a debt that has grown to 1 trillion in the past 3 months, while your economy only grew by 5.5 trillion in the past 3 years. How's that one for you? I can offer you a degree of safety against inflation. You can now be less miserable about the prices, which seem to always rise more than expected, as the inflation just won't go away. Look, the government isn't going to take care of you, so forget the protests and do it yourself. Take matters into your own hands is what successful people do. I decided to help my audience shelter their assets and diversify them into gold, which is something that has always been used by the rich to preserve wealth throughout the history. Birch Gold Group makes the process straightforward. They can help you convert your existing IRA or a 401k account into a tax advantage physical gold IRA without any of the out pocket costs. Just text Captainese to 989898 and receive their free info kit on gold IRAs that is packed with insider information on how gold and silver can protect your savings. I've checked out their references before partnering with them, and their endorsements include Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and Ron Paul, and I trust these people. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, Gold now has 5-star reviews and thousands of happy customers.
Birch Gold Group is the nation's #1 gold IRA provider. To learn more, text Captainese to 989898 and claim your free info kit on gold IRAs. You also have the link in the description below.
Oh, that's interesting. Two things to say about that. The bug guy, how crazy it seems to you. It really depends on which city he's in, because if he happens to be in the New York subway, he will barely stand out nowadays. Let me tell you, I wouldn't even, the things I've seen in there, not much can surprise me. I totally wouldn't. I just go about my day, honestly. Um, and the second thing, that's why it's important to have minimal standards so that you know whether or not you're actually doing good. And before we were talking about prison being like life lessons on steroids, I think that also goes for your life. When your life is falling apart, your partner left, you lost your job, you're broke, and you have legal issues, and you don't sleep well, and you don't eat well, and you don't work out. This is where I think it's very beneficial to have these type of minimal standards in the chaos that you're in, so that you have some very clear uh, quantitative things by which you can judge whether or not the day went minimally well, right? So certain requirements that are going to be very basic depending on how chaotic the environment is, that you can actually look at and say, okay, in all this shit, I did do I did reach the minimal standard, right? Um in prison, that can be just, I they ate breakfast. And outside prison sometimes too, I ate breakfast. That's how long you can go. So now the question is, spička ti materna. Ah, that was really hot. Yeah, English is not my native language. Let's go to the question of, why did you leave? Because I know that when people leave their job, usually it's not one-time thing. It's usually a trigger. It's usually a build-up. It's not an event. So when you let's walk through the build-up and the reason why you actually left. And what are you doing today?
Great question. It was a buildup. I think once you're in any job, you're assessing what you're doing day to day for longevity purposes. You're wondering, okay, can I do this job for 22 years? And at first, I think my naiveness and my excitement of the challenge, because I am a little bit of a challenge junkie. I love a challenge. If you want me to do anything, tell me I can't do it, and then I'm like, okay, I'll show you I can do it. And the more I worked there, year one, year two, I was, pretty acclimated. There are a lot of good officers, but I noticed there are a lot of people who are just very unhappy, coming into that environment, working every day. You start to feel a way as an officer when you're trying to do the right thing as far as what your job is. You're not trying to, you're literally one of those people who are there who are not trying to add on to the fucked upness of someone else's day. You literally going in there to do your job and to go home to your family. You're being used for, 16 hours a day, 4 days a week. A lot of times you're missing out on life. That jail becomes essentially your life. And like I said, my sons were a big catalyst for me. I was newly married. I had twin boys. That was a big catalyst for me to get what was considered a stable job. I was very unhappy after a while. I got into an altercation with a particular inmate one day. He had threatened, it was a newer blood um, who had come into my housing area, who decided what I was gonna do and the way I was running stuff was gonna change. And you have to make a decision. It's either you're gonna stand on what we say 10 toes down, you're gonna stand 10 toes down on what you said, or you're going to fold and someone else is gonna now be the respected person and the authority figure in your housing area. And that wasn't gonna work for me. Um It ended up it ended up one day being one of my three uses of force that I've had on the island. Um if I have an altercation on the island, number one, I'm not doing it with all of the other, if I can control it, is what I'm saying. I'm not doing it amidst all of the other inmates. That's number one. Number two, I'm not here to embarrass you because I know I know what's gonna happen when we fight. If it's gonna be that altercation. I'm not here to embarrass you. And three, I don't want to, my goal is not to seriously harm you or kill you, essentially. That's not what I'm here for. But if you pose a threat and you physically threaten me, I'm going to protect myself. And I'm going to do it in a way where the next person knows that you may not want to do that. When it comes to Officer V, you may not want to do that. So we had altercation, and he was a very high-ranking gang member, and he got the short end of the stick. And my sons, I remember around this time, 2012, 2013, probably 2014. Around this time, I was teaching my sons how to ride their bikes. Right, it was a great time. Me and my wife was teaching them how to ride their bikes. We lived in the Bronx. We lived in these apartments that were kind of like condos, but we had a first floor, so we had a back door. We used to let them ride their bike and play in the back area. And then one day I came home and I had a very particular pair of inmate shoes at my back door. So shoes that only inmates wear on Rikers Island were now at my back door. How'd they get there? I wonder. I've said this before, and I don't know 100% that it was the cause of that, but that leaving shoes at a person's back door that only the inmates wear, to me, is a clear and threat that I know where you are or I know where you stay. And if it was a joke, it was a bad joke. It wasn't anything that I was gonna take as a joke. Because if that's what happens when you underestimate the situation, it normally ends up bad. And I was very, very concerned about that. Someone seeing where I live, and subsequently my sons play out there. My wife uses that back door to come into our home, you know. So I tried to do what I thought was right. I made a police report about it. NYPD didn't really see the correlation in jail shoes. Oh, sounds like somebody was pranking you. Da da da. Why would you prank an officer? Well, regardless of what, you weren't looking for a positive reaction by doing that. So it was very, very. It was something that bothered me. So after I made the report, I took it to the jail that I was assigned to and applied to get my carry, my concealed to carry, because if I needed it, you know, I don't want to end up in jail. I know how bad it is, so I'm not trying to do anything illegal. And subsequently, I was denied, and I was denied my concealed to carry because my current record said that I was chronic. And what chronic means is when you've had a lot of time off. And the reason why I was chronic is because during that stint in jail, I had injured my wrist. I had pulled and ripped some tendons in my wrist from trying to open a faulty cell door to get an inmate out of the cell. So I was out because I was injured on the job, which made me chronic, which let them deny me to carry a gun for the situation that I was telling you about.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the shoes on your doorstep, that's I don't know if that's not a message, I don't know what it is. That's not a message as in, I know where you and your family live. So, yeah, you were definitely right on. Maybe it was a joke, but it's a risk I wouldn't be willing to take either. And I understand that, you work there and you put yourself in dangerous situation. But yeah, I'm like that as well. When it comes to family, that's a clear cutoff. The message was definitely very not subtle. It was not subtle. It was meant for you to know what the fuck is going on. So, did you usually prefer to solve situations one on one with inmates or make an example out of them? What was your preferred method? Because I think that you want to make an example, but then again, back to life lessons, sometimes one on one functions better because in high school, for instance, um, I was never bullied except that there was this one person that I think was trying to bully me, but I'm not totally sure. But what I did was I didn't tell anyone, but I just asked him. I said, "Hey, can you step aside a little bit? Like, can we talk?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I asked him like, "What was that about? Like, what's the reason for the remarks and stuff?" And it was a totally different person. Let me tell you, a totally different person than before, like with the schoolmates and then in person. And I never had any problems with him whatsoever after that conversation. So that sometimes works, but you have to make an example for others people to also see. So what would you do? What was your preferred
If I
method?
had if I had an if I had a if I had something that had to happen with an inmate, it would be one on one. If I was now, I've responded to a bunch of alarms, and that's a group setting, of course. Um, but those are alarms that you just have to respond to when the jail calls for it. But if I had an incident, even if it was a verbal, we were gonna talk about it. It's everyone else is locked in. The night's over. It's time to lock in. I'm locking you out. Let's go to the day room so me and you could talk privately. Because everything to me was about respect. So I'm gonna respect you, and we're gonna talk one on one, and we're gonna see where that goes. But to call 4 or 5 people to jump on you, I'm already 6'2", 320 pounds. I don't need to do that. I mean, it's not necessary. But I'm not scared of you, but I'm not talking to you to be scared of me. That's not what I'm after. But if at the end of the day you threaten to cut my face and you want to act like you're gonna spit on me and you bump into me doing so, once you break the touch barrier, I gotta respond to you. And that's just what. But no, never with a group. Always by myself. And while I say all of this stuff that I've happened, I feel like I have to put the other side of it to it. While I've had these things that have happened, these events that have happened, these experiences, I've equally had so many good experiences on the island as well. And I always want to give both sides to that because I've not only had the instance where I've had shoes at my back door, um, but I've also have had inmates write me letters and leave them for me, just to thank me for the type of person that I was. I've had run-ins with inmates at the car wash. This is the type of energy that I have, right? With people. I love mentoring young men. And if you're younger than me, I look at you like a mentee, hopefully, if you allow me to talk to you and try to change your perspective a little bit. I've been at the car wash. I was so happy when I was on Rikers. I had gotten my first Mercedes and I was riding around in my white Mercedes and this guy comes behind me and hugs me like this, like bear hugs me. And all I hear on my shoulder is Officer V, what's up? Anybody calls me Officer V, I'm like, "Oh my god, they're from the island." It was a former inmate, and we had a great conversation. He had gotten out. I've had people find me on Facebook. I don't know how they find me, but find me on Facebook and call me to talk to me about they just got out, I'm trying to stay out, I'm trying to do this, trying to do that. So I've had such good experiences and bad. But I feel like it's all important to keep stuff in perspective though.
Yeah. Well, you are dealing with humans, right? So you're gonna have all the aspects that you can recognize in yourself as well.
That's what initially made me leave the island, because if you're not going to protect me, then all deals are off.
What are you doing today?
You won't believe this. So I spent 9, 8.5 years just working different corporate jobs in North Carolina. And just recently, within a year ago, a little over a year ago, I went to work for a women's prison in North Carolina. So I currently work for a women's prison in North Carolina.
Do you see them as your daughters as well, or like little sisters? Do you enjoy the mentoring as well, even though it's the opposite sex?
I don't I don't try to mentor. I try to stay as far away from the females as possible, because to be honest, the dynamic there is very tricky. Um Anything kind of looks like too much familiarity.
Well, the way the laws are based, I assume that many of them are just waiting for an opportunity where they can claim that you tried to rape them or something, because the laws are based in their favor. I'm not surprised, honestly. I'm not surprised you went back behind bars. That sounded wrong, but I'm not surprised you chose this job again, because there are certain jobs where once you get into them, you're gonna get into the same thing or something very similar, because those are jobs like, I don't know, a cop, security guard, a military psychologist, because your life purpose comes with the territory. Like, that's one of the positive collaterals of the job. Let's say if you work on Wall Street, if you trade stocks, speaking from experience, you're gonna have to really get out of your way to find something that drives you outside of work, because inside of work you're working for nobody but yourself and the money. But in these type of jobs, it you get a whole package, right? So it's like it's really there for you. So when you get out of it, you want to it was something that gave you something other than money, that you could really enjoy in your life. Being hyper vigilant for like 8 hours a day, and more, 16 hours a day basically, and then coming home and having to switch it off is, man, that's brutal.
And when you have a security mind, it's crazy. I was with my sons and we were driving, and he was going to a basketball tournament, and we were at a Bojangles. And I'm looking at him and his friends are gonna go in Bojangles, and I'm looking at the guy going before him, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, he has a gun on his waist." I mean, it's legal out here, but like a couple of days ago, I'm on the phone, I'm talking and FaceTime, and somebody's at my door, and I'm on the phone with the missus, and I'm like, she just goes to the door and opens the door. I'll say, "You just opened the door? Like, look through the freaking door, like, answer through the ring, like, what are you doing?" But that's when you're wired like that, now you're wired like that. It's kinda a permanent thing. I don't know how to turn that off now.
That's interesting. You see, with me, I would if I'm alone, I do all the crazy dumb shit, like opening the door, fucking leaving my keys, whatever the fuck, that's like I'm 7 years old. But if I have someone with me who I care about, I will get super vigilant about these things. All right. During the worst periods of your work, when you were really emotionally exhausted, what kept you going?
You gotta find things. I credit a lot of what I'm able to make it through, simply having memories. Going through the obstacle course, going and doing all of the training and stuff was tough. All of the running. One of the instructors just recently passed. Man, He had our push-up game and our calisthenic game as best as it had ever been for me. And just holding on to, you have to have something that inspires you, something that means more to you than you. So even when you're tired, go beyond that. We used to jokingly say pain don't hurt. It's kind of mental. I mean, pain is pain, you feel it, but it's a way to give into it, and it's a way to block it out and keep moving. And when you kind of, we're bodies, and the human spirit is amazing. Like, sometimes you're amazed that, man, I really got through that. I really did that and that. Like, who knew? And once you know or unlock that it's possible, it's like, wow, man, what else is possible? So just having stuff to hold on to, and family definitely for me was it.
Man, it's always some other person. When I ask someone what got you through the bad situation, they always name someone else. Like you never hear someone say, "Oh, I did it because of me." Because if it was up to you, you'd never get out of bed. If you're the only person who you're doing it for, I think that's how people screw their life around. Like I think that's how people that deteriorate in life is because they don't have anyone else to do things for. I think that's the clear recipe. No, when it's only up for you, because then you're just not. It's like I said, when it's up to me, I'm not gonna protect my house if I'm the only one in. If there's no one I love in there, like okay, I love myself, but I mean, eh, you know. Oh.
But you're a bit of a badass too, so you're probably like, whatever comes in here is probably gonna wish they didn't come in here. So
Yeah, I mean, I want things to happen. Like I need some excitement. I don't live. I'm not in Harlem. I'm not in Brooklyn. I live in Slovenia. Nothing ever happens here.
really,
You cannot even walk around at 2 a.m. and have some shit happen. You have to go look for it. And even then, only if you're really lucky.
really, I have to visit this place you talk of.
You have to retire here, not visit. This is not a tourist place, man. I see the Chinese. We've been having Chinese tourists. I'm just gonna say that, and then I'm gonna let you go. We've been have obviously I have no one to talk to. We had Chinese tourists lately that they've been visiting this place, man. You can see it on their face. They're so disappointed, man. When they get out of that bus, they don't even know what to take a photo of because there's nothing to take a photo of. The Indians seem to be really interested. The Indians really like this place for some reason.
Okay, I have to look up Slovenia. Slovenia.
Now, so again, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, man. I'm freezing in this room, yo. This hotel room is the coldest motherfucking hotel I've ever been to. All right, man. So now that was a great interview. I loved it. And tell us, where can people find you?
You can find me on. I have a website called nylifeontheisland.com. You could find me there, send me an email. I took all of my experiences that I've seen on the island and have been able to really pour them into a 4-part book, which I put digitally the first part on my website. I really want to turn this series that I'm writing into a show. I want people to know what officers go through on a daily basis. I want to tell people how hard it is to come down mentally from certain environments when you're put in regular life and how sometimes that clashes. Like I've had certain incidents where I've had to be like, okay, calm down. We're not on the island right now. We're here. Like it's a mental toll. And I think people will be really interested to know what happens to your family, what happens to you, the things you encounter. I have a lot more stories that I haven't told that I will tell in those other series. So my website, nylifeontheisland.com, is where I could be found. And I'm gonna try to get the story out there because I feel like we've heard stories from guys that have been locked up, inmates or prisoner perspective, but we don't know about. I went to I worked with one of the guys who got locked up for I forget how many years because he was smuggling drugs on the island. Um, so I've had and been around all these amazing stories. So I think people would find it interesting to watch.
Thank you so much for coming on.
But I do know this.